so recording. We're on.
Okay. Hello and welcome to another installment of And Now for Something Complete Machinima. So this month I'm producing the show. I'm Damien Valentine, also known as Darth Angelus, and I'm joined by Ricky Grove.
Hey there.
Bill Rice.
Hello.
And of course Tracy Harwood.
Hello.
So we're going to be talking about news, different things that we've found out this month, and I'll get straight to it with the ones I've got on my notes here. So the first thing is Reallusion. So you got iClone 8 coming out sometime this year, and they keep releasing work in progress videos showing off the new features that are going to be in iClone 8. And about a week before recording, they released this new one, and it's got these new features that they're kind of quality of life enhancements. You can still do these things in iClone 7, but it's a lot more work to do. So one of the things they showed off is you can put objects and characters in groups, so you can disable them, make them disappear, which is very helpful when you're producing big scenes, because when you've got lots of stuff happening on screen in iClone, it can really slow down your system, which makes it a lot harder. Yeah. So you can turn these things on and off very easily. You just put them in a group, so you just turn the entire group on and off with one mouse click. And that's also going to be helpful for if you're rendering things in layers for post-production. So you can have your whole scene, so you get an idea of where everything is. But if you only want to, let's say, render the furniture without the characters, you could just do that, because you put all your furniture in one group, then you put your characters in the group, turn off the characters, render the furniture, and then you can then swap it around, so you render out your characters as a group, and then you can do whatever post-production you want to do. And you can do that in iClone 7, but it's so much work to go through the list and turn off everything you want on and off. And if you forget something and you've rendered it all out and you have to do it again, it can be a real pain. So this makes it's not a massive exciting feature, but it's something that is going to be very useful. And I'm quite excited for it myself, actually, because obviously I'm a big iClone user. So moving on from that,
hold on. I got a couple things I want to say about that.
Okay.
One thing, I'm really glad you picked this because it fits in with our theme for the month of April, which is focusing on Reallusion's iClone and related products. Our films were all Reallusion iClone films, so we're going to be looking at that quite a bit. The work in progress videos, the one you looked at is the most recent one. They've released 3 videos so far. The one you're referring to is the one on file and scene management. The very first one, though, was on their entirely new character animation system, which is, I think, the most dramatic, because animation has always been a bit of a problem in iClone. And this solves a lot of the problems that they've had. Transitions, getting characters to interact with each other, getting to move to the places that you want them to, and more believable. The transition between one animation set and another animation set was oftentimes abrupt. You'll see that when we show some of the films that we're picking. You'll see what that is. I've been following iClone since, I think, iClone 2, way back, and I actually have, I'm going to include it on our show notes this year, but I actually have a documentary that I shot way back in the early 2000s at one of the Machinima festivals in Queens, in which iClone had their first booth set up to demo iClone. And you see a very young John Martin showing the basic video setup. But I'll include that on the show notes. Did you get any indication of when iClone 8 was due at all? Did they give a quarter?
I think it said second quarter when they announced. Excuse me. Second quarter when they first announced iClone 8, but I don't know if that's still the plan or if it's been pushed back. Because obviously development with the ongoing pandemic does slow things down. So it says, as far as I know at the moment, it's still second quarter, but it could slip into 3.
Okay.
I guess we'll just keep an eye on it, and we'll keep talking about iClone as more is revealed in the following news episodes in the podcast. So
Sounds good.
yeah, and I remember that documentary, Ricky, and they were giving away those free CDs with the
Yes.
their first copy. I've still
Yes.
got my copy somewhere.
Uh-huh.
It's come a long way since then.
It sure has.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to the next bit of news. We've been talking about throughout the life of this podcast. We've talked about the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett as Star Wars shows that use the Unreal Engine to create all the environments for the actors to be in. And the next one coming up is Obi-Wan Kenobi, which uses the same technology, and they've just released a trailer for it, and they've got some even more impressive environments they seem to create, because the show so far seems to concentrate on desert planets. It's always a desert planet. It's Tatooine, or there's the other one from the Mandalorian that I can't remember the name of it right now, but they all look very similar. And I guess it's because they've created those assets and they're just retinting them, so they don't have to rebuild everything from scratch for these new environments. But here in Obi-Wan Kenobi, they've got it's kind of almost like a cyberpunk city, like you'd expect from Blade Runner. It's all dark and there's neon lights everywhere, and then there's this planet which is from one of the video games, where it's a secret base that's underwater, and you can see that, and there's characters talking in this room, and the windows outside, and it's all the seas, the oceans out there, but it's all created in iClone, the same sort of virtual environment technology. So I'm excited to see, not just because of the Star Wars fan, but I'm excited to see what kind of locations they create that can be very different from what we've seen so far. And I think it's a case of they've been using it so much that now that they're getting a better feel for what they can do, and they're kind of pushing themselves to see what else can they do. So I think it's a great way to see what the technology can do.
Yeah, it looks really great, and I like the way that they're sort of reinterpreting the Star Wars style away from comic book simplicity and making it much more like current written space opera.
Yeah.
Authors like Adrian Tchaikovsky and Ian Banks have been redefining space opera into a more gritty and darker and more varied style, and the look seems to reflect that. I liked it. I thought it was good.
Yeah. So the series will, for those who want to try, the series is going to start on May the 25th, which is actually the 45th anniversary of the very first Star Wars film. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with that. The next piece of news, it's related to the live-action TV show Star Trek Picard, and it's sort of a continuation of Star Trek Next Generation. And why I'm talking about this now is they had a fleet of ships appear in the most recent episode, and the designs of those ships were from one of the Star Trek video games. So normally you get the tie-in video game, and they all bring content from the films and the TV shows, and they'll sort of make video game models of it, so, more simplistic models, and for the games to be able to run on people's computers. But this is kind of the complete opposite of that, where they've taken something from a video game and put it into a live-action TV show, and that's not something that, it's not necessarily machinima, but it kind of is, because we take video game assets and make films out of them. And this is kind of taking it a little bit further by taking those designs, and then I guess they must have made more highly detailed versions of these ships for their, for the visual effects quality that they want for the TV show. But it's there, and there's a documentary about how the designer of the ships got the job. Initially, he was a fan of the game, and he entered a contest, and they liked his work, and then he got the job, and then he designed his ships, and now he's actually seeing his creations in the proper official live action TV show, and that's
pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So mine uses that documentary so you can see that sort of process, and he's obviously very excited about it, and I don't blame him. It's a big achievement for him.
Yeah, I like the documentary. However, the sound recording was very poor for the promo in the documentary. I'm not sure. I mean, given the fact that you can buy a $49 lavalier mic that is crystal clear when you're recording. I don't know why they screwed that up so much. It made it hard to watch a lot of the documentary for me, probably because I just am sensitive to sound like that. But I liked the idea of it, and I thought it was pretty cool, and it was neat to hear his story. I thought that was pretty cool.
My next find was a series of tutorials for Nvidia Omniverse by JSFilmz, and he produces many videos throughout the week, and he kind of alternates between different subjects, but it's the Omniverse ones that I've been following because I've been teaching me a lot about how to use the software, and he makes them very easy to follow. So if you're interested in learning about Omniverse, or maybe you're using it but you don't quite know what everything does yet, check out his playlist. I don't think he's covered everything yet, so I'm sure he's got more coming. But he also alternates between Unreal videos, which I haven't checked out yet. But if they're anything like his Omniverse videos, then it's definitely worth having a look at his Unreal content. And he's playing around with what's the character? Nvidia's character.
The Unreal guy.
Yeah, the Unreal character tool. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. But, can't remember his name.
Yeah, but he's basically he produces lots of tutorials that are really good for Machinima. So check out his YouTube channel, and you'll find that in the show notes.
I thought it's a little odd that there was quite a big push when Omniverse came out with the Machinima aspect of it, but there's been nothing since. Well, actually, there was a little thing a couple months later, but there's been nothing in the last 4 or 5 months. I think they're still working on it, but I just think that's kind of odd.
What I think they've done is Omniverse isn't just one piece of software. It's a launcher, and then there's all these different programs in it. There's Create, and there's View, right, and then Machinima. So Create is the one that I mainly use, because if I'm taking my animation from iClone, I just load it up into Create and it's there. But Machinima is kind of the same thing, but also has the animation tools. So if you want to create animation from scratch, you would use the Machinima tool rather than Create. I haven't used the Machinima tool too much. I've sort of played around with it a little bit, but because what I'm doing is mainly animating everything in iClone, I don't need to animate it again in Omniverse.
Got it.
It hasn't, but you're right though, it hasn't actually been updated in some time. So I've had it installed, but it hasn't had any updates for months.
Yeah.
And I've had one for Create in that time, which is, that itself was quite a while ago. But I think we'll see more about that at the GTC conference, hopefully.
Yeah.
Where they're going to talk about it a bit more, which by the time everyone is listening or watching this, that will have already happened. So. Okay. And that's it for me. So Ricky, what have you got?
Oh, as usual, I've got a ton of things. I'll try not to talk your ears off. One thing in particular I want to discuss, but I'll give you some brief things. Unreal 5 preview is out. I just added that this morning because I discovered that they've made that available, and there are quite a few interesting tutorials. There's some pretty significant changes in Unreal 5 having to do with scene management, similar to the iClone thing, but also rendering and lighting has been completely redone. We'll put a link to a couple interesting tutorials in our show notes. And I'm looking forward to trying it out a bit more. I've been doing a series of digital landscape tool reviews at Renderosity magazine, and I'm going to be moving into Unreal in a couple of weeks, so that's going to be fun to play with. My second piece of news is a HalfLife mod called HalfLife Field Intensity, which has actually been in development for 13 years, and it just released this month. We're recording in March. It was created by a group of 3 veteran modders known as the Hazard Team, and their previous work includes a 2009 prequel mod, Half-Life Induction. It's a substantial project. It has all sorts of new levels and new material. It looks like a lot of fun. Interestingly, the team is a mix of Russian and Ukrainian modders, and
Oh, wow.
obviously they've had some troubles trying to communicate with each other. They're fine, but it's been quite a journey for them releasing this, and then suddenly Ukraine gets invaded, and so it's a mess. We'll put the
Wow.
download link for it at the moddatabase.com, moddb.com, which is in general a really great place to look for mods for your game. The Nvidia GeForce RTX 3080 tier is now available monthly for $19.99. It allows you to use 3080 RTX hardware to stream your Epic or Steam games for a monthly fee, which means you don't, even if you have a poor GPU, you can use their GPU to stream it. It's $19.99. It looks like an interesting deal. They're just starting out, so I'm not sure if I'm not sure how that's going to work. But if anybody uses that, I know there are a lot of Steam game people who watch this. Definitely take a look at it and let us know about it. But it looks good. Also, it seems that the graphics processor market is loosening up a little bit. If you remember 6 to 8 months ago, Phil and I did a episode of building a Machinima PC, and we were talking about how difficult it was and how expensive cards were. It looks like that's loosening up a bit.
I
Phil,
agree.
have you been had that in your business? Because I know you deal with that all the time.
Yes, yes. The prices are still higher than they probably should be, but now they're at least within reach. Nvidia themselves has helped with that by releasing the 3050 series of card, which is still very competent. It's a really good card, and it's the lowest priced of the tier. So there's quite a few choices in there depending on budget, and yeah, a lot more of those are starting to become available now.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're going to use Omniverse, you have to have an RTX card. So might be a good time to upgrade, unless you want to wait a little bit longer and see if that frees up some more. Dead Space, if anybody remembers playing that wonderful series of 3 games, I loved it. I just thought it was fantastic. There's a remake that's going to be launching in early 2023 by developer EA Motive. They ask Dead Space fans when they might be able to purchase. They did a presentation. They said it's in the pre-alpha stage of development, and they're just a couple of weeks away from being able to do a walkthrough of it. So it looks like 2023 for a Dead Space remake, which I think is cool. That game didn't quite get the attention it deserved. I thought it was a wonderful space horror game. I played all 3 of them and just loved them. Some of the most frightening and gruesome moments in gaming for me. Now, the big thing I want to talk about is Elden Ring from Software, Japanese. I don't know whether any of you have ever played any of the Dark Souls series, but they're incredibly frustrating because they're just so damn hard. The fighting system in particular. I did Dead Souls 2 and gave up after about a week or two because I just couldn't get any further. I just kept dying all the time. I couldn't get anywhere. It was less fun and more frustration. Well, they just released on February 25th, Elden Ring, which is the latest of the Dark Souls style games, and they've made some major improvements. It's their first open world game, so you can go anywhere you want. And it's much easier to play, although the level of difficulty is still fairly high. I've been playing it for about a week and a half now, maybe 20, 25 hours, and I just love it. I think it's great. It's very strange. It's very interesting. You have all sorts of, it rewards discovery. It's beautiful visually and strange visually. And there's a lot of different play styles. And I was keeping my fingers crossed that modders would jump in and do something vis-a-vis Machinima. And they have. There's an Elden Ring photo mod created by Otis_INF. And although it isn't 100% Machinima, it allows you to do quite a few things. One, it releases the camera, which is the biggest thing. It allows you to reposition the camera, not only in the game, but in the cutscenes as well. So if you want to use cutscenes, you can reposition the camera. You can also keyframe the camera to do movements, and you can do ease in and ease out on it. You can change the field of vision. You can pause the game at certain points. What else do they have? Oh, you can change the light, the sunlight. So if you want to relight the scene to be more dramatic and go in different ways, you can do that. Now, the issue with this photo mod is that Steam has a pretty severe policy about no mods for online play, which is completely understandable. So you have to use this mod offline. And fortunately, we'll put a link in it. He makes it very easy to do. And there's a video of a guy testing it all out that I saw on YouTube, and you can see it all. I'll make sure we either embed that or put the link to it. And it gives you a good idea of how it works and how to avoid getting slammed by Steam if you suddenly forget and try to go online. It's not as if they're going to suddenly ban you. They're not going to do that. But it is really, really good. And I think it'll open up the world to this really cool game to Machinima. And just on the off chance, I checked the mod database and Nexus Mods, and there are 35 mods for the game so far. Most of them are I was really surprised, even though the game is only released on February 26th. But I'd say half of them are look mods, the color mods, like upping the bloom on certain things or changing the color
and things like that.
Shaders. Yeah. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. So that's pretty easy modding to do. I think in the next several months, it'll be interesting to check those mod databases. And I'm going to do a full report as a blog post on completely-machinima.com on the photo mod. And maybe we'll do some Machinima with it. But it's particularly good for photography if you want to make some really interesting photographs, because the game is filled with give you an example. I've tried a bunch of different characters, and I was going down one route, and I was going through this forest and everything, this misty forest, and there was a sort of mausoleum there, and I glanced at it. So on like the third or fourth playthrough, I decided, well, I'll take a closer look. So I went in there, and there's a little dais, a circular dais. So I went in there, and suddenly the dais started to move, and it dropped down. It was an elevator that took me into this lost necropolis underneath everything. I had no idea any of that was there. And it's this massive space that's just completely strange and weird. And it was just, I discovered it accidentally. It was so delightful. It made me so happy to find these odds. And apparently they're just all the way through the thing. And so definitely take a look at it. As I said, there's a certain level of difficulty, but there's lots of really good tutorials and features, and if you've ever wanted to play a Dark Soul style game, this is the one to do it in.
It's a very popular game over on Twitch right now as well. So if you wanted to get an over-the-shoulder view of someone playing through it, you'll be spoiled for choice over there on Twitch.
Yeah, that's great. Same way with YouTube. Lots of people writing about it. That's my news for today. I think Tracy, you've got something, don't you?
I certainly do. In actual fact, I just happened to be reading Guardian Culture and came across this this story about a little clan called the Grannies. And it turns out that there has been a documentary short film created about a group of Australian game developers who are basically explorers in Red Dead Redemption 2 online. Now, we've commented before on the amazing environment that is Red Dead Redemption. And this is a group of folks who are equally transfixed by that almost photorealistic depiction of early 19th century US places. But they're not making films as such. What they're doing really is traveling to the edge of the game world, literally pushing through that edge into this sort of beyond space, and then exploring an entirely different area of the game and taking photographs and making up their own sort of fun, during which it would appear that they found these really bizarre glitches. So this then has become their mission. They've sort of started to deliberately seek out these glitches and faults and weirdness in this kind of game's code, and then recorded themselves disappearing into the ether and finding these kind of weird places where the code mixes and duplicates limbs and what have you. And the thing that kind of caught my eye with the story in the first place was the fact that there's this horse with a rider on it, sort of floating in the air. And guess whose film that reminded me of, Phil?
Yes.
That's really why I kind of got attracted to it, because I was thinking, what else are they doing with this? Anyway, the film itself is basically a documentary about the Grannies themselves, rather than a machinima per se, I believe. And actually, what's quite hard is to try and get to the film. So the film is described as a peek behind the curtain of the game's world. Now, in fact, the Grannies were first reported in Kotaku.com Australia in 2019, and there's a really interesting article about what they've been doing, which we'll put in the show notes, because I think it gives you a little bit more insight into how this has evolved. And what this film actually is a commission for the Now Play This festival, which actually was originally commissioned in 2020. And it's an annual game-inspired event, which that particular year was guest directed by a woman called Marie Folsom, who has actually curated game-related exhibitions around the world, including in London at the V&A and in New York. And Marie, she's directed and produced this film. But in fact, the theme of the Now Play This festival was actually about something they call breaking point. So it was something that she kind of thought was a perfect fit for that particular festival. Because the problem was it didn't get showcased in 2020 because the pandemic caused, just destroyed absolutely everything. So in fact, it actually was premiered at the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam last November, and has been the official selection of the London Short Film Festival earlier in January this year. And actually, I'm really curious to note that it's been selected at the Milan Film Festival as well, which is or will have been shown at the end of March, as this episode goes out in early April.
Nice.
Now, the plan for it, I'm kind of curious how this is going to play out, because the plan for it is to show it primarily in festivals and venues, which basically means we're probably not going to see it on YouTube, which I think is somewhat disappointing, actually. And alongside that, another reason they're sort of giving for it not being shown on any of the online channels is that it's also part of a multi-channel installation being exhibited alongside a game that one of the Grannies has actually created called Red Desert Render. And that's been inspired by their experiences of playing Red Dead Redemption as well. Suffice to say, if you've seen it at the Milan Film Festival, be really interested to hear what your views are of it. I think it's going to be quite a different kind of film to some of the things that we've showcased on the podcast. If you happen to be in the south of London, in central London, south of England, that is, in early April, it's going to be shown at Somerset House between the 8th and the 10th of April as well. So we'll put a few links on the blog, and hopefully somebody somewhere will see this kind of 20-minute long documentary and tell us a little bit about it. So that's it for my news on that one.
All right,
Yeah, that tradition of exploring the uncharted areas of games goes way back. You know, the id Software is the one that I was the most familiar with, but in all of the Doom games and the Quake games and even the original Wolfenstein game, the developers would actually put Easter eggs in the game to encourage that deep exploration. They didn't have anything to do with you could play through the whole game and never encounter those, but they would put those hidden things in there, and there was a lot of inside references and private jokes. The one that comes to mind is at the end of Doom 2, which was 1994. You face this creature that's spawning in all these demons at the end. It's just this big wall with this huge goat-like demon head on there, and all this stuff spawning out, and this really creepy backward masked phrase plays, in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, people extracted that audio and flipped it around, and what it said was kind of in like the Pink Floyd tradition of backmasking. Instead of something creepy, it was, to win the game, you must kill me, John Romero. And if you cheated your way inside the head of the demon, on a spike in there was the head of John Romero. That supposedly is what this demon really was. And Quake had tons of things like that too. I mean, not just secrets, but even beyond that, Easter eggs. But to me, the things that were the most fascinating are the kind that these guys discovered, which were the unintentional,
the glitch,
unintentional spaces in the game.
Uh-huh.
And I can remember in Quake 2, there were certain bugs in certain levels that you could kind of slip through a wall, and all of a sudden you're outside seeing all these surfaces that have no texture assigned, which would create that Hall of Mirrors effect, if you remember. When I was reading a description of their experience, I thought of those types of things, and they're fascinating when they happen. The only time I ever experienced them was in those much lower fidelity games. So it wasn't as an impactful experience as what they encountered. Here, it's this richly rendered game that feels like, an enormous world. And then to actually reach the edge of that, and it's amazing.
I love that idea of the glitch in the game, that it's almost, I almost think of it as our world and then the supernatural world that exists at the same time. Sort of like the Platonic looking at the shadows on the cave wall thing. I had one of the most amazing experiences playing a World War II game, about 10 years ago. And, it was okay, it was fun, but I was getting kind of bored with it. And somehow, some way, I slipped through a crack somewhere and I was outside of the game, looking at everything. The entire setup for this whole level was right in front of me, and I was just floating, looking at it, looking at all of the NPCs. I was looking at it was the Pacific, so there were Japanese soldiers all set up, everything frozen, and I could just go anywhere I want and nothing affected me. It was almost as if I suddenly left my body, and I was floating around. It was so exciting and so interesting. I love that. I love that phenomena.
Yeah, I think, but the thing that strikes me about this is it's a documentary about the players, rather than the them doing it themselves. So I'm kind of curious to see what that's about, what angle they take on that. So yeah, interesting.
Okay.
Would be if we do get a chance to watch it. I think it'd be quite a fascinating thing to watch. Yeah, and like Ricky and Phil said, I've got some entertaining stories where you escape the world that you're supposed to be playing in, and strange things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw a video of probably a year ago of the most recent Doom game, and it was I guess it's classified as a reaction video, but they got the developers of the game into a room to watch and comment on a speedrunner who had beaten the entire 8 to 10 hour game in like 45 minutes. And one of the things that he did multiple times was he had found one of those cracks. So there's this huge landscape, filled with all these difficult jumps and monsters to take on. And he just zips up, and then he's just scooting along the ceiling, passing it all, and drops down on the exit. And the developers are just going, how did he find that? And some of them, they didn't even know were there. And so they were writing like, yep, we got to patch that one, don't we? Yeah, it's a fascinating world.
Good find,
Tracy.
Okay, so that wraps up our news for this week. For those who don't know yet, on Thursdays we do premieres on YouTube for our latest episodes. So be sure to come and join us there. Basically, we'll show our latest episode, and we'll be there in the chat interacting with people. So that's always fun to do.
Right, that's 12 o'clock Pacific time. And what is it in your time?
8 p.m.
8 p.m.
Yeah, we've had some great folks show up and had some real good comments made in that premiere chat. So please do come and join us.
Yeah, it's fun not just to record this and then put it out, but to actually talk to you guys as well as as we're watching it. That's a lot of fun. So if you've got any feedback, please do send it in. If you're interested in anything we've talked about, or have some some views on what we've been talking about, please send us to the email address and everything on the website. And that's it. So see you all next time, where we'll be talking about films, and we've chosen iClone as the theme. So all the films we're going to be talking about were made with iClone. So see you then.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.